Recognizing the invisible hand of grace shaping your life through strange coincidences, many people can recall moments in life that felt too meaningful to be random. A chance meeting that changed a career path, a missed bus that prevented disaster, a sudden opportunity appearing after a long season of prayer. From a Catholic perspective, these events are not merely coincidences. They can be glimpses of God's quiet and loving providence, His invisible hand gently guiding the story of our lives. In Catholic teaching, God's providence means that He lovingly governs all creation, leading everything toward its ultimate purpose. This does not mean that God forces events or removes human freedom. Instead, He works through the ordinary flow of life through people, timing, circumstances, and even apparent accidents to draw us closer to Him. Sometimes this guidance is obvious, often, however, it appears hidden behind what we call coincidence. The Catechism teaches that God is the sovereign master of His plan, yet He allows us to be true participants in shaping our destiny. This partnership between divine grace and human freedom is the heart of the mystery. Grace does not overpower our lives, it quietly invites, arranges, and nudges. Think about the story of Joseph in the Old Testament. Sold into slavery by his brothers, falsely accused and imprisoned, his life looked like a chain of misfortunes. Yet, years later, he would say, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." Joseph's rise to power in Egypt ultimately saved countless lives during famine, including the very family who betrayed him. What once seemed like tragedy revealed itself as providence. Our lives often follow a similar pattern, though on a smaller scale. At the moment, we see confusion, later we see connection. One of the most common ways grace appears is through unexpected encounters. You meet someone who gives you advice you desperately needed. You hear a message at Mass that speaks directly to your struggles. You stumble upon a book, a video, or a verse at exactly the right time. These experiences can feel uncannily personal, as if God is speaking in a language tailored just for you. This does not mean every coincidence is miraculous. Catholic spirituality encourages prudence and humility. But when moments consistently lead us toward goodness, truth, healing, or deeper faith, we can begin to recognize a pattern. Grace often works quietly, but it always moves us toward love. Another sign of God's hidden guidance is the closing of doors. Many people interpret blocked opportunities as failure or rejection. Yet, in hindsight, these closed doors often protect us from paths that would not have led to our true vocation or happiness. How many people have experienced heartbreak, job loss, or sudden change only to discover later that these painful events redirected them toward something better? The Church teaches that God never wastes suffering. Even trials can become instruments of grace. When united with Christ, consider how often prayers are answered in unexpected ways. We ask for success, and instead we receive patience. We pray for change, and instead we are given strength. We beg for clarity, and instead we are given time. God answers every prayer, but not always in the language we expect. Coincidences can be part of that answer. Catholic tradition speaks of divine timing. God sees the whole picture, past, present, and future, while we see only the present moment. What feels delayed to us may be perfectly timed from God's perspective. A conversation arrives exactly when your heart is ready to hear it. A challenge appears when you are finally strong enough to face it. Faith grows when we begin to look back and notice these patterns. Gratitude plays an essential role in recognizing grace. Without gratitude, coincidences remain random. With gratitude, they become signs of God's care. When we thank God for small blessings, we train our hearts to see His presence in everyday life. Slowly, the ordinary begins to feel extraordinary. The saints often spoke about this awareness. They lived with a deep trust that God was present in every detail. Nothing was too small to be part of His loving plan. Even inconveniences could become invitations to patience, humility, or compassion. This perspective does not eliminate life's mysteries. We will never fully understand God's plan in this life. There will always be unanswered questions and moments of confusion, yet faith assures us that God's guidance continues even when we cannot see it. Recognizing the invisible hand of grace requires 3 spiritual attitudes: trust, attention, and surrender. Trust allows us to believe that God is working even when life feels uncertain. Attention helps us notice the subtle ways grace appears. Surrender enables us to accept that God's plan may differ from our own expectations. When these attitudes grow, coincidences begin to feel less random and more relational. Life becomes a dialogue between the soul and God. You begin to notice how often help arrives at the right moment, how frequently hope appears just when you feel discouraged, how often paths cross for reasons that only make sense later. Over time, a quiet conviction forms: you are not walking alone. God rarely shouts. He whispers through circumstances, timing, and people. He writes straight with crooked lines. He uses ordinary moments to accomplish extraordinary purposes. Looking back on your life, you may see a trail of seemingly random events that led you to where you are today. A conversation, a decision, a delay, a chance opportunity. Each moment felt isolated at the time, but together they form a story. And at the center of that story is grace. The more we learn to recognize this invisible guidance, the more peace we experience instead of fearing the unknown. We begin to trust the author of our story instead of resenting interruptions. We become curious about their purpose instead of seeing chaos. We begin to sense quiet order. In the end, faith invites us to see life differently, not as a series of accidents, but as a journey shaped by love, and not as random coincidence, but as gentle providence. When you start to see your life through this lens, even the strangest coincidences become reminders of a simple truth: God has been guiding you all along. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next video.